So today we are going to discuss the subject from the Bhagavad Gita of happiness. And in this world, everybody is looking for happiness. In my talks, I often ask people that all of you who want to be happy, please put your hands up. Everyone puts their hands up. So I always tell them, all those who are willing to give up sorrow, put your hands up. And everyone puts their hands up. Sometimes people put both hands up. Everyone wants to give up sorrow. Then I ask them, are you willing to give up joy? Please put your hands up. And everyone pulls their hands down, even put their heads down. Because no one wants to give up joy. No one wants to give up happiness. But joy and sorrow, happiness and distress, these are two sides of the same coin. One side is heads, the other side is tails. You cannot take a coin and say, I will choose the heads, but never the tails. So you cannot give up sorrow and hope that you can cling on to joy. As long as you cling on to joy, that joy will come accompanied by sorrow. He who jumps with joy must also sink with sorrow. And before we can begin to understand what happiness really is, we have to truly see that the search for happiness cannot exist or cannot be successful within the world. Everyone looks for happiness within the world, and everyone thinks that if they get money, they'll be happy. If they get good looks, they'll be happy. They think that if they find the right spouse, they will be happy. So in this way, everyone thinks that if they find the right external prop, they will make their life happy. This search for happiness is called hedonic happiness. Because what is hedonic happiness? Hedonic happiness really is seeking happiness through pleasure and enjoyment. And as long as you seek happiness through pleasure and enjoyment, you will look for things of the world that will give you pleasure and enjoyment. Do you think that when you have all the money that you want, you'll be happy? Well, you will certainly be comfortable. There's no doubt about it. But happiness does not come from wealth. Wealth can give you comfort, but wealth cannot give you happiness. There are so many examples throughout history of wealthy men who are in distress. And even now, if you look around you and you know enough wealthy people, you will find there will be not one wealthy person who has found true happiness in his wealth. He may be happy because he has found happiness through other means by looking within, but he will not find happiness from his possession of wealth. So we have very good examples of this. And perhaps some of you have seen the movie called The Aviator. And if you have seen this movie called Aviator, I think it's available on Netflix. So in this movie, it's a movie which is starring Leonardo DiCaprio. And it talks about the life of Howard Hughes. And Howard Hughes was so wealthy, You cannot imagine how wealthy he was. He owned wealth from coast to coast. And even if you started calculating his wealth, you would discover that you were wrong, because some stocks had gone up, something else had increased, the real estate values of what he held had gone up, some companies he owned had made more money. So he really had so much money that you cannot even imagine it. In his time, he was the wealthiest person in the world. He owned airlines, he flew. Of course, that's why the movie is called Aviator. He owned Trans World Airlines, TWA. He owned movie theaters. He had film actresses at his beck and call. He was, one of the truly, if where money could make people happy, then truly Howard Hughes must have been the wealthiest person. But he was not the wealthiest person. In fact, the last years of his life were spent in mental decline. He was considered eccentric. He suffered from severe obsessive compulsive disorder. He hid himself in a room where he lived almost naked. He ate the same thing for lunch and dinner, and he refused to meet anybody. In fact, he stayed in darkened rooms, and he was so unhappy, that he was constantly in tears. And finally, he died completely alone, with his hair grown long, his nails gone, turned into claws, and he was on drugs. And although he was 6 feet 4 inches, he weighed barely 41 kilos. And it was very difficult even to identify his body. So this was the uniqueness of the richest man in the world, that being rich did not make him happy. Would becoming beautiful make you happy? Would be physical attractiveness make you happy? What about Marilyn Monroe? There's a movie about Marilyn Monroe too, if you would like to see it. And you can see how Marilyn Monroe became the most beautiful woman in the world. People were really crazy after her. In fact, one day she was walking down the streets of New York wearing a sack-like dress, large sunglasses that obscured her face, and she wore a scarf around her head, which covered her hair. And her companion said, "Why are you dressed like this to disguise yourself? Why don't you be who you are?" So Marilyn Monroe tossed her head, threw the glasses away, pulled off the scarf, and tied that scarf around her hourglass figure around her waist. And people went mad around her on the street. And in fact, there was a automobile accident because of the motorists turning their attention to her rather than to the cars on the road. This is how attractive she was. And she had so many admirers, so many people who really craved to be near her, people who craved her body. And yet, despite marrying Joe DiMaggio, despite marrying one of the greatest playwrights that ever existed, so she had her choice of men. She is alleged to have had relationships with the President of the United States of America and his brother. So she really had the world at her feet. But did that make her happy? She was not happy. In fact, she was so miserable so miserable that she was on tablets, she was on drugs, and eventually she committed suicide. And this beautiful woman who had the world at her feet, when she passed away, it was very difficult to find one person who would claim the same her body. Imagine, when she was alive, everyone would have claimed her body. But when she passed away, nobody wanted to claim her body. Finally, her agent came and took possession of the body and then got people together to conduct a funeral. Some people think that perhaps if I marry the right person, I will be happy. So why don't you take a look at the life of Elizabeth Taylor? She married 8 times. And despite marrying 8 times, twice to the same person, Richard Burton, she surely wasn't happy. Because even after that, she kept looking for somebody who would be a spouse who would give her happiness. But happiness is not available to you outside yourself. Happiness lies inside yourself. And your job is not to look for things and people in the world who will make you happy. Your job is to look for happiness inside of yourself, and finding that happiness inside of yourself, you need to share it with people in the world. You need to share that happiness inside of yourself with people around you. That's when you have happiness, you become a fountain of happiness, and you share this happiness with people around you. That is what happiness really is. So there are really 2 types of happiness which have been described by philosophers and also by people who have studied psychology. And these 2 types of happiness are called hedonic happiness, and the other is called eudaimonic happiness. Hedonic happiness is that happiness which we get out of pleasure and enjoyment. It is the happiness we get through our senses and through our mind. And by seeking happiness through our senses and our mind, we go towards gluttony, overweight and obesity. We go towards taking intoxicants, which give you alcoholism, eventually liver failure and death. Hedonic happiness we seek in all the pleasures of the world. We seek hedonic happiness in sexual pleasure. And eventually, when normal sexual pleasure seems inadequate, then what do? Then you look towards sexual perversions. And through sexual perversions, you seek happiness. And that leads to all kinds of crimes, including pedophilia and so many others. So don't look for happiness through hedonic happiness, because hedonic happiness is that happiness which very soon undergoes a phenomenon which we call as tachyphylaxis. It means that if eating one delicious spoonful of that rich ice cream made you happy, you think that by eating a bucket of ice cream, you'll be even more happy. It doesn't work that way. So hedonic happiness, by seeking it through people and the things of this world, through the senses and through the enjoyment of the mind, is called hedonic happiness, and it never works. In fact, our Shastras are full of describing this. And it's clearly stated that the objects of the senses are called Vishaya, which means that which is poisonous, because we believe that it will make us happy and lies outside of us. It is truly poison. The other happiness, which we need to seek within ourselves, is called eudaimonic happiness, and is that happiness which comes by seeking meaning and purpose. And when we find that inner sense of well-being, which comes through seeking meaning and purpose, through the activities in your life that add value to the world, you become inwardly fulfilled. And becoming inwardly fulfilled, you first find peace. In the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 2 and text 26, Krishna clearly said, Nasti buddhira yuktasya na cha yuktasya bhavana na cha bhavyatah shantir ashantasya kuto sukham. One who is not situated in union with God can have neither controlled mind nor can he have steady intelligence. Without a controlled mind and steady intelligence, he cannot have peace. And if you do not have peace, how can you have happiness? Ashantasya kuttah sukham. If you are not at peace, how can you be happy? We've all seen, times of great tension when we are appearing for an examination, when a group of people is waiting for an interview, for a job that might change their lives, or for admission to a college which would change their career. And when we are waiting in great stress and great tension, somebody makes a stupid remark, an absolutely stupid, inane, puerile, asinine remark. And suddenly at that moment, it seems so funny that everyone bursts out laughing and they think, how funny it is, how funny. Is that happiness? That is not happiness, my friends. That is called hysteria. If you are not at peace, you can never know happiness. If you are not at peace, you will know only hysteria. You are seeking relief from the tensions of the world. And when you seek relief from the tensions of the world, you will laugh at anything. So indeed, Krishna says in chapter 2, text 66, first you have to have a controlled mind. You need to have a steady intelligence. You need to become sthita prajna. And when you have reached that state of sthita prajna, then you will have peace. And when you have peace, then you will find happiness. Earlier, I explained to you the concept of emotional intelligence and the Bhagavad Gita. First, you must become emotionally immune to people in the world who are pressing your buttons, to events in the world that are pressing your buttons. To the external world which is constantly trying to upset you. And when you become immune to all the provocations from the world, and you are able to attain that equanimity of mind, that peace that surpasses all understanding, when you attain that state where you are completely content within, and that contentment does not mean inactivity. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks to Arjuna and explains what is his devotee. Santushta satatam yogi yatatma drida nishchaya may arpita mano buddhir yomad bhaktah samay priya. Krishna says, my devotee is always content, santushta. But although he is content, He does not remain like a rock, like a stone. He does not remain like somebody who's fixed in meditation, sitting on his asana, being completely inactive. Krishna's devotee, he says, is not just content always, but he engages in the world, doing his swadharma, his duties, with great determination. Yatatma drida nishchaya. With great determination, he engages with the world, performing his duties and fulfilling his responsibilities. How does he do this? Mai arpita mano buddhir, because his mind and intelligence, Krishna says, are surrendered unto me. Such a person, Krishna says, is my devotee. So he is santushta, he is completely content, and yet he is yatatma drida nishchaya. He is engaging in the world with great determination. So therefore, we need to understand that happiness lies within. In chapter 5, text 24, Krishna says, Yo anta sukho antaramas tatha antar jyotireva yah sa yogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhutadi gacchati. One who is happy within, who is active within, who rejoices within, who is illumined within, he is in fact the perfect yogi. He is liberated and situated in the Supreme, and he, on leaving his body, attains the Supreme. Dukheshu anudvigna mana sukheshu vigat spriya vita rag bhaya krodha stitidi muni uchyate. Such a person, Krishna says, he is not distressed when there's cause for sorrow. He is not excited when there's cause for joy. He is free from attachment, fear, and anger. Such is the sage of steady wisdom. So the first stage of your journey in spiritual life is to attain this state of equanimity of mind. You will find that as you do and you perform the sadhana that I teach you, as you study the Bhagavad Gita and you live the Bhagavad Gita in your life, as you chant your 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, you will find that you are getting progressively immune to the tumult and the drama of the world. You will experience this loving detachment that you will develop for people around you. You will find that people are unable to agitate you. Krishna says very clearly in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that for one who has conquered his mind, for him God is already reached. For him, heat and cold, joy and sorrow, honor and dishonor, they're all the same. So indeed, the first stage towards attaining happiness is to attain peace. As Krishna says very clearly in 2.66, Ashantasya kuta sukham. How can you find happiness when you have not attained peace? You will only attain hysteria if you have not attained peace. And once you attain this standard of equanimity of mind, this ability to be unperturbed by the events of the world, this peace that transcends all understanding, then you become ready for the next stage. So from Jivan Mukti, you become ready for Parabhakti. Krishna says, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na sochati na kankshati Samaha sarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labate param. When you reach this spiritual platform of Brahma Bhut, you will be free from hankering, you will become free from lamentation. You will look at all living entities with equal vision. And having attained that equal vision towards all living entities, then Krishna says, you will get Parabhakti. So what is Parabhakti? Parabhakti is that now you are no longer a victim of emotions. Now your emotion is your choice. It is your choice because it is God who is acting through you and choosing the appropriate emotion for the occasion. So from reactive emotion, you go to proactive emotion. From directing your emotions towards the world, you now direct your emotions towards God. Then as you look at the world, then as you use emotions to communicate with the world, as you use emotions to influence the world, as you use emotions to extend your fulfillment and joy to those around you, then you will be in the stage which we call as Parabhakti. So then you can arouse all kinds of happiness. You can arouse great peace. You can arouse great joy, deep sense of fulfillment, deep sense of contentment. You can also find yourself filled with such joy that you cannot help smiling all the time. For indeed, constant smiles bespeak of empty minds. So when your mind is truly empty of self, then you will always have a smile on your face. And you will be able to connect with people around you with great love, with deep love, with compassion, with a feeling of oneness, because you have reached that transcendental goal, which is, Krishna says, Yaj gnatva na punarmoham yamam yasyati pandava sarva bhutani asheshani drakshasyaatmanotam. So when you have learnt the absolute truth, you will realize that all beings alive within me, they're in me and they're mine. So you will become nothing. And yet, because you are nothing, you will be able to enter into the hearts of people around you, understand them, care for them, respect them, take responsibility for them, share your joy with them. All these things become possible through Parabhakti. So, don't look for happiness in the world. Happiness lies inside of you. The more you look for happiness in the world, the more misery you are guaranteed to get. But the more you look for happiness inside of yourself, you will find great joy and great peace. First, you'll experience peace and equanimity of mind. Many of you are already doing this because I know that those of you who are taking what I'm saying seriously, who are indeed offering every action of the day and everything to God, they are experiencing this. Yat karoshi yad ashnasi yat juhosi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat purusham adarpana. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, whatever charities and whatever austerities you perform, Krishna says, do it for me. And those of you who are doing it for him, who are performing every action with the idea, Om Tat Sat, every action you do, every email you send, every meeting you attend is offered as a flower at Krishna's feet. And these flowers, at the end of the day, you pick them up, make them into a garland and put them around Krishna's neck. And the heavier that garland, the lighter your heart, the lighter the garland, the heavier your heart. This is the law and Many of you are already experiencing it. You're experiencing that the world is affecting you less and less. You are coming closer and closer to detachment and also perfect knowledge. You're clearly coming closer and closer to the realization that you are nothing, that you are nobody, and that God is acting through you. You are but an instrument of His. That you do nothing and God is acting through your prakriti and doing everything. You're realizing this. And as you realize this and you expand your awareness of other people through forgetfulness of self, you will experience true happiness, which will take you closer to God in this life and in union with God after this life. From Jivan Mukti in this life to Videha Mukti when you leave this body. So I'll pause here. If there are any questions, I'll be very happy to take them up.
Morning, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. First question is, what is peaceful for one is not necessarily be peaceful for the other. So how can one be in peace for real and so can be happy?
What do you mean peaceful for one is not peaceful for the other?
I
A
mean,
silent mind is a peaceful mind. So silent mind is peaceful. Wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever the circumstances be, it is a common factor. You cannot say that what is peaceful for one is not peaceful for the other. We're not talking about having a glass of scotch and listening to music and saying I'm feeling peaceful. That's not the peacefulness I'm talking about. I'm talking about the silent mind you attain when you offer everything to God by remembering Him and forgetting yourself. When you chant 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. For a minimum of 15 days, I'm telling you. And you will then begin to experience what peace is all about.
sure. Sir, another question is, maintaining equanimity becomes difficult when dealing with irrational behavior. So how does one
Say
counter
that
that?
again.
So maintaining equanimity becomes difficult when one deals with irrational behavior. So how does that counter that?
See, first of all, you don't have to maintain equanimity. Equanimity is a blessing that you get by the grace of God. So you don't have to maintain it. If you are absorbed in remembrance of God and forgetfulness of self, you will have equanimity. If you see that everything that's happening in the world is happening by the grace of God, you will have equanimity. If you think that the world is not under God's control, if you feel that person who is behaving irrationally is not under God's control, then surely you are not conscious of God. Because not one blade of grass moves without God's consent. And if you find people around you who are irrational, first of all, try to avoid them. Second of all, if you can't avoid them, then try to understand what God is trying to teach you through that person. Because that person also is behaving involuntarily. He is a puppet in the hands of the puppet master who is God. And God is trying to give you a message through them. So have compassion towards people who behave irrationally. Give them love. And if you cannot avoid them, try to understand why Krishna has put you in contact with such a person and what is Krishna trying to teach you through that person. And when you realize that, you will find peace.
Sure, sir. So another question is, how can one actually become immune to emotions or situation he is already in? How can they get over?
I've already explained to you in great detail over the lectures that have been coming till now. I want you to chant 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. You can chant this 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. That's 16 malas of 108 beads in the morning and 16 malas and 108 beads in the evening. Do it for 15 days and you will see the difference. And through the day, every action you perform, do it as an offering to God. Everything that happens in your life, even the irrational people who are misbehaving with you, try to understand what is the message God is giving you through them. And if you do that, you will experience all the results I'm talking about. There are enough people listening to me now who are already experiencing it.
So, sir, does that make it us insensitive? So, can we say that detachment makes us insensitive of emotions, or is it something else?
Detachment means your emotions don't get roused, that you continue to feel love and compassion towards them. But you don't get irritated, you don't get upset, you don't get disturbed. Is that clear?
Yes, sir, by others' actions and
So you
what.
don't have reactive emotion, you can have proactive emotion. Reactive means you are reacting to somebody else or something else pressing your buttons. Proactive means you choose the correct emotion for that moment, and selecting that emotion, you use that emotion skillfully as an instrument to fulfill that purpose that lies in front of you.
So, our next question is why do people consider comfort as happiness and not what comes from inside?
Because no one has told them that. Because nobody has, maybe these people have not experienced that happiness that lies from inside. But many social science studies, which are scientific, which have been published in peer-reviewed journals, which are evidence-based on studies of people, they have demonstrated that people enjoy what they're doing when they're doing something for a purpose which is far, far greater than themselves. And the most unhappy are the people who are doing it for their salary, who are doing it for money. And those people who are working for things which are beyond themselves, which are far, far greater than themselves, they are the people who find true fulfillment and true happiness. Meaning and purpose are more important in your life than pleasure and enjoyment. If you seek the path of pleasure and enjoyment, you will get one result which will lead to sorrow and unhappiness. And on the other hand, those of you who seek meaning and purpose, they will find inner fulfillment and eudaimonic happiness. There's a path of prayas, which is pleasure and enjoyment, and there is a path of shreyas, which is doing the right thing. Those who follow the path of prayas will get sorrow. Those who follow the path of shreyas will be happy and fulfilled.
Sure, sir. Means we also need to understand the long-term happiness than short-term happiness. Short-term happiness is according to the comfort, and long-term happiness is actually what comes within. Can we say that?
See, by your prarabdha, you will get the comfort that you are destined to get in this life. Don't worry about it. You focus on doing your duty, adding value to the world, and fulfilling meaning, finding a meaning and fulfilling a purpose greater than yourself. There are 4 purushats. One is called dharma, which is to do your duty, fulfill your responsibilities, all these things. So that is dharma. Then you have artha, which is the accumulation of wealth. Kama, which is pleasure. And moksha, which is salvation. So you can only make an effort which is successful in dharma and moksha. As far as artha and kam are concerned, you should be happy with what comes from your natural prarabdha. So your purusharth comes in dharma and moksha, and your prarabdha becomes, you should rest on your prarabdha, on your kama and artha.
Sure, sir. So if there is anything you would like to add to the session about happiness.
No, I think that I said enough. If you listen to the recording, you get a better idea what I'm trying to put across.
Yes.
So,
So
if
thank you
there are
so
any
much, sir.
questions, you can still address them. Thank you.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much.
Jai Shri Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna.